Britt Westbourne had always carried a storm inside her, but in the days following the disaster in Croatia, that storm became a hurricane that would not quiet. Port Charles once felt like a place she could bounce back to, a city that forgave, forgot, and constantly recycled tragedy with astonishing speed. But this time, stepping back into its familiar streets felt like returning to the scene of a crime where she herself was both victim and suspect. Her hands trembled when she held a glass of water. Her sleep fractured into shallow breaths and sudden awakenings. And beneath all of it was a question she couldn't shake. Was she next? The shadow hanging over her was not abstract. It had a name, Jens Sidwell *, a cold architect of violence whose solutions always came laced with gunpowder and silence. Britt had survived men like him before, but Sidwell was different. He didn't bluff. He didn't rage. He simply eliminated obstacles. That was the part that made her skin crawl. Men who kill calmly never hesitate to do it again. Croatia had changed everything. She had returned only because Jason Morgan insisted it was the safest move, because he believed facing danger was better than running from it. Britt trusted Jason more than she trusted most people, but not even Jason's assurances could cut through the fear that curled around her ribs like barbed wire. And now Jason wanted answers, a truth she wasn't ready to say out loud. Jason had discovered the key she carried was tied to the laboratory break-in, an event she desperately wanted to pretend had nothing to do with her. But denying it was impossible. It had been in her pocket at the worst possible time. And Jason's expression, when he realized the significance of that tiny piece of metal, carved a hollow pit in her stomach. She knew what was coming. Jason didn't deal in half-truths, not when lives were on the line. His questions came sharp and focused, and Britt felt like she was under a spotlight she didn't ask for. Worse still, her connection, however indirect, to Dalton made her complicity look even darker. Henry Dalton, brilliant and slippery, had been a man who walked too many lines at once. Sidwell was never going to tolerate that kind of unpredictability. When Dalton chose to withhold information, Sidwell responded the way Sidwell always did, with a bullet. Britt had seen enough in her life to recognize an execution disguised as efficiency. The message was unmistakable. Dalton was a warning, a gruesome punctuation mark meant for anyone else contemplating disobedience. And Britt could feel that message burning beneath her skin. She could be next. What made it worse was the feeling that the circle around her was tightening. Rocco Falconeri, a kid who merely wanted someone to connect with, now seemed to approach her with motives she didn't trust. Emma Scorpio Drake insisted that the boy admired her, but Britt couldn't feel the warmth of that admiration anymore. Suspicion had rewired her brain. In paranoia, even affection looked like a trap. She was becoming an outcast again without anyone having to push her. Every whisper, every glance over a shoulder, made her question her place. And the medication she depended on, once her anchor, suddenly carried no comfort. What good were pills for a future she wasn't convinced she would live to see? There were moments when she packed a bag in the middle of the night. Nothing dramatic inside, just clothes, documents, cash. She would stare at it, imagining herself stepping onto a bus or a plane to nowhere, disappearing from Port Charles the way she'd disappeared from other places before. Reinventing herself had always been easy. Surviving the process was the hard part. But the city tugged at her through unexpected threads. Jason, with his quiet steadiness and impossible patience. And somewhere out there, though she hadn't seen him in months, was Brad Cooper, her best friend, her worst influence, her partner in disasters. Brad, whose absence had been a strange wound she refused to acknowledge. If anyone could talk her into facing danger instead of fleeing it, it would be him. But Brad was missing in action, swallowed by his own chaos in some unnamed corner of the world. What Britt didn't know, what no one knew, was that the universe sometimes folds paths together at exactly the moment they are needed. If she ran, if she truly followed her impulse to vanish, she might cross paths with Brad in the last place she expected. A nowhere town, a roadside cafe, a hospital miles from Port Charles. Brad had a way of appearing exactly when Britt's life felt impossible. He didn't fix things. But he made her believe they were fixable. Jason, meanwhile, was preparing for an entirely different mission. The more he learned about Sidwell and his involvement with Dalton, the more Jason's patience thinned. He wasn't a man who talked about eliminating a threat unless he meant every word. He had told Britt once, very quietly, that if Sidwell became a danger to the people he cared about, he would handle it permanently. At the time, she hadn't understood the depth behind that statement. Now she did. Jason didn't make promises. He made decisions. And Sidwell was becoming a decision waiting to happen. Still, Jason's instincts were not purely tactical. He cared about what happened to Britt. He didn't want her running, didn't want her spiraling into fear. And he certainly didn't want Sidwell controlling her life from the shadows. If she left, Jason would not shrug and move on. He would track her down, not because he saw her as a liability but because leaving meant facing danger alone. And Jason didn't let people face danger alone. The irony was painful. Jason wanted to save Britt, and Britt wasn't sure she deserved saving. Her past was a graveyard of mistakes. Her future felt like a narrow hallway with no doors. Running felt like the only choice that was truly hers. But staying meant fighting, and fighting meant opening herself up to harm she didn't know if she could endure again. In upcoming days, Britt would find herself pacing the same rooms she once hated, staring out the same windows she once escaped through in her mind, and feeling more lost than she ever had before. Her fear wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, suffocating, and relentless, an enemy that did not sleep. And yet, amidst the panic, a whisper of possibility kept flickering. The possibility of finally facing Sidwell, of finally freeing herself, of finally rebuilding a life that wasn't built on fear or running. But Britt was not ready, not yet. Her confusion became her constant companion. Some days she felt brave enough to stay. Other days, she felt the urge to flee down to the bone. Jason's determination, Rocco's innocence, Emma's faith, Sidwell's threat, all of it collided inside her, leaving her exhausted and overwhelmed. And somewhere out there, waiting to collide with her world again, was Brad Cooper, a chaotic beacon she didn't know she needed. Whatever path Britt chose would shape not only her future but the futures of those tangled in this tightening story. The moment she decided, stay or run, Port Charles would feel the impact. And in the episodes to come, the only certainty was that Britt Westbourne's life was about to shift violently once more. Whether she ran toward her fate or away from it remained the question haunting every second she breathed.